Hitchcock, obviously. Avatara is out of St. Louis, Missouri, and we provide private cloud solutions for small and mid-sized businesses, and have a client base that's all over the country. So we have a group of customers here in Dallas and some partners here in Dallas, and thought it was a pretty cool opportunity as Coach moved down here to do a little bit of an event. So obviously, if you have any interest in what we do, we have a booth, and we can talk about that stuff later. This isn't meant to be a pitch. That's not why you guys came here. We do these tech on taps all over the country. We started doing them in a room that's a little bit smaller than this in the bottom of our facility. We have a bar though, and we said, hey, let's be an IT company or a cloud-based company that provides good information to businesses and has a beer while we do it. And then through our partner network, we just started putting the show on the road a little bit. So we're doing this one. We have one set in New York City, Charleston, Louisville. So we kind of just something that we like to do. So with that, this is obviously a really cool opportunity with a future Hall of Fame coach. Did some time in Philadelphia and Columbus and St. Louis, obviously very successful here in Dallas, and you guys have him back. We had planned to have Coach talk in St. Louis, and we were opening up a new corporate headquarters, and we talked about this a little bit because you're dealing with locker room construction. Well, anyway, when you have construction, it never happens on time, and so we kept pushing it back and pushing it back and pushing it back, and Coach was nice enough to, even though we couldn't do it in line with our opening, to put an event on down here in Dallas. So really appreciate your flexibility with that, and I think this is a really cool opportunity for us all to learn about running teams. Right?
Well, I don't know about that.
I'll try to
Well, anyways, this started in St. Louis. I played golf at a place called Glen Echo, which is Glen Echo is a golf course that was built in 1896 and hosted the '04 Olympics, the only Olympics until the last one. So this is where Canadian and American played in the finals, and it was decided on the 16th hole. So it's a very famous golf course. But one of the things that we got together in one of the men's night was that there was a lot of unfulfilled charity work. So all of us were told to put up or shut up. So I volunteered to speak 6 times. And I didn't care if one person showed up or 1,000, I didn't care. And so this is kind of my obligation to whoever shows up to speak on behalf of charity. And a lot of the funds went to 2 or 3 areas, one of them being foster kids and stuff like that. So we all had to dig in and volunteer for charity. So I'm doing this, Tony LaRusse is doing this, Mike Matheny's doing this. So some of us that are in the pro sports side of things, we dug in, and it's been very fulfilling. This is my last one. So I've done all the other ones, and this is my last one. And all I wanted to do was explain to you not how to run a business, but just what's changed in our world and what's very unique to our world and where it is and where it's going. So a little story. A year ago, last summer, I went to a military post in Canada, and I went there to observe what's changed in special forces. So very similar to what happens here with the SEALs and stuff like that. I stayed for a couple of days to see what they did, and the things that I observed are what's really going on in our workplace. And I was explaining to you what's changed in our workplace is when I was here in the late 90s and early 2000s, when I told the players what to do, that was good enough. Now it's the what and the why. And unless you can convince them of the why, the what doesn't matter. So you can be the best technical coach in the world, you can have the best system, you can have the most knowledge, you can be the smartest guy in the world, and if you can't tell them why they need to do this or what's in it for them, they're not going to buy it. And it's the same thing as, same way that you work with younger people, and it's the same way it was when I observed these soldiers. So I went to this weekend, they call it a retreat. It was not a damn retreat, but we went into observation towers and observed warfare for 2 days. Anyways, it looked like a bunch of ants running around to me, but it was organized. So you had the good guys and the bad guys. And anyways, what happened after really intrigued me. So they went into a facility, not a lot different than this, like maybe 3 times the size, clean as hell, no signs on the building. They drove their vehicles into it. So there were 60 special ops there, and there was about a dozen observers, and probably 25 guys that played as the bad guys. Anyways, there's over 100 people there, and long tables like this. Anyways, they came in after this the second day, and they all came in full uniform, and they were packed. They had guns, they had full uniform, they had helmets on, and what was unique to me was, based on names, you couldn't tell the generals from the colonels, from the lieutenants, from the captains, from the privates. You couldn't tell anybody from anybody, because all they had was names. They just called each other names, and nicknames or names or whatever. And it never registered me why they were doing this. They went and met to have the review or the debriefing. And everybody stood behind their chairs, and all of a sudden somebody said something, one word, and then everybody's helmets came off. And they put their helmets on the table, and then they sat down, and then all hell broke loose. And now the helmets on the table meant everybody's in equal footing. Everybody has equal ground here. And that's why the nicknames were there, because there was no position, there was no status. Everybody was equal. And it's similar to the way they do things in soccer, where everybody's equal in soccer. And obviously there was a couple of guys that didn't do their job, and they got just blasted by everybody. And they were high-ranking officers. And I thought it was unique, and so I started to talk to the soldiers, and I said, how does this work? He said, well, for the special forces to work now, there can't be a pecking order. Everybody's got to be on equal footing, and everybody has to feel valued. And if you want people to have input, you've got to be able to listen to them. So when they sit down in a debriefing, everybody has a voice. No matter where you are, no matter what your status is, how many years you've been in, everybody has a voice. That's what's happened in our sport to the successful teams. The successful teams in our sport and in the English Premier League and in other major sports, everybody has a voice. And that's what's changed. So even though I'm the coach, when I sit at the table, if a player doesn't like what I'm doing, I've got to be able to absorb that stuff. So first, if you're going to be successful in our business now, you have to be an active listener. If you're not an active listener, and if they don't believe that you're listening, if they don't believe that you're listening, then they'll shut down on you right now. They're not going to work for you. And I think it's the same in dealing in the workforce, quite frankly. Second part for me is that when I ask them to do something on the ice, or I explain how we want to play tactically, I have to get to the end game also. So telling them what to do, this is the way we're going to play, I have to tell them why and what's in it for them. So I've got to always explain the end game before I can anticipate the buy-in. And the third thing for me, which is really important, is that it's not just having a voice in the team that they want, they want the ability to make the adjustments, to present the adjustments to you, and you buy in. So to increase the investment, I've got to let go. I've got to let go of the hockey club, and every day I've got to give them back the team. Every day I've got to give them more and more responsibility. Otherwise, at some period of time, the buy-in stops. It stops because you're not listening. It stops because you're not giving them back the team, and it stops because they feel like you're not being an active participant in their goodwill. The other thing that comes with our sport now is the mob or the entourage. And I was saying to you that the entourage is what gets coaches fired. And it's not that the entourage itself gets you fired, it's your feelings towards that entourage get you fired. There's a lot of coaches that I talk to now in the summer, and they're all shook up because the player has his own nutritionist, his own development coach, his own skating coach, his own stick handling coach, his own strength coach. And every player comes with help around them. And you have to find a way now to work with those people. If you shun them or you shut them down or you discredit them, the player won't perform, because they've invested a lot of time long before they got to you in this investment, and they've spent a lot of their own and their parents' money to get there, and they feel strongly that this is a person that's going to support them. I always use the term, you can't be offended because they want to go to the other side of the lake to fish. You can't be pissed off because they think that the fish are on the other side of the lake. And in our business, that's what gets coaches fired. When you're offended by them wanting to take someone else's, or get someone to get them help that you think you could do in-house. And that partnership there is as important as the partnership in playing the game. And they treat their bodies like fine-tuned engines. They have their own beliefs. They've grown up with their own beliefs, and you have to respect that if you want to have success at the end of the day. And that's the nature of our sport now, and that's the partnership that has to evolve. It's not just an on-ice partnership, it's an off-ice partnership, but it's a respect factor that they want to do all this extra work, and you have to respect that work. And I know here, I listen to the staff here talk about what the players were doing away from the rink, and taking care of themselves. And they were concerned about that. And to me, it was like, well, I just went through it. Like, it's no big deal. And yet it happens everywhere, and rather than shun it, you got to embrace it. And if you embrace it, then you've forged another partnership with the players, and you're going to be successful. The other thing for us is that the phones, whatever, are the addiction in our business. And how are you going to invent contact? In other words, how am I going to sit and go out for dinner with you, or go out for dinner with you, and we're actually going to speak to each other? The emotional, physical contact that we're trying to get the players to make is our biggest challenge now. So when we go for dinner, nobody's got their head up. When the players eat a pregame meal, nobody's got their head up. And we have to work every day at creating the atmosphere that the players are going to be able to actually speak to each other. So there's mechanisms in place that we put on a daily basis that make the players uncomfortable, but at the end of the day, we think and hope are going to work. So, for instance, just some things with us. They have to make physical contact with each other every day. They got to go and shake hands. They got to bump fists, or they got to hug. But they got to do that, and that comes from soccer. They've got to when they sit down and they go into the meal room, because the professional players, they eat breakfast at the rink, and they eat lunch at the rink. on practice days, so they're together a lot, it's phones down. They can't come into the meal room with phones. So they actually have to visit and talk to each other. And the other part, which is really important, is this meeting them halfway. And it's a little thing, but it's the most uncomfortable feeling for this generation to get called into the office. Like, the trepidation of getting called into the office is unbelievable. So we have to meet them halfway. So we set up, okay, we're on this end, you're on this end, let's set up the meals, let's set up the meeting rooms halfway. So we'll come your way. We're not going to have you meet us in our office. We're going to go into this common area, and this is where we're going to talk. And it's amazing how much more comfortable that makes them. And so that's what we do. So we're in the middle of literally reconstructing the Dallas Stars training center downstairs, and we're moving deck chairs on the ship, but that's what we're doing. We're putting it in a position where, okay, we're coming halfway, you're coming halfway, and we're going to meet on this stuff, rather than asking you to. I send a coach down there, hey, can you get Johnny? And Johnny's got to march all the way down to the office, and then he comes back and everybody wants to talk to Johnny. What happened? We just meet in the middle, and it makes the players comfortable, and that's what it is. And that's changed, quite frankly, I would say in the last 5 or 6 years, it's just changed dramatically. And the coaches that make those adjustments, they end up having long-term careers, and the ones that don't, you don't last. It's that simple. And even to the point where when we run a meeting, we have a coach who watches the players who are watching the coach. So they're seeing if they're making eye contact with are they looking at the screen? Are they looking at what's going on? Are they paying attention? So we have one guy that just watches them, and whether they're watching or whether they're paying attention, so that we know where the connection is and where the disconnect is. And the reason for that is that when you see somebody say, well, they're shutting the coach out, or they're tuning the coach out, it starts way deeper than that. It starts that they're tuning each other out, and then the coach ends up bearing the brunt of it. He becomes the focal point. In the meantime, they've stopped talking to each other, and that's where it starts. And then it filters into our room, and then we end up paying the price for it. That's the nature of our business. So that's where we're running. I quite frankly have learned the best sport at handling this age group is the soccer. I spend a lot of time observing how they do things. I've gone over there twice to talk to them and to see how they operate, but they have a handle on it. They don't complain about this generation. They found ways to make them uncomfortable, and yet they turn comfortable with it. And they've learned to work with this age group. And the guys that are successful have learned to work with it really well. And I think that's the one sport that we in North America can learn from to work with this generation. Because this isn't going away. This is in Pee Wee hockey, this is in mite hockey, this is in midget hockey. Long before we get them, it's in that sport too, and it's not going away. And we're going to have to find a way to make sure that we're successful in dealing with it. But coaching is not in the X's and O's now for a head coach. It's in the people management part of things, and the X's and O's are as irrelevant as they've ever been. Sure, you got to make adjustments, but how you get each other, how you get the players to feel about each other, and how you get them to dig into each other, the people part of things is way bigger now than it's ever been, because there's just too many places for them to go mentally and physically, outside the team, and you got a big job in just keeping them moved together. Huge job. So that's what we do. And here in Dallas, quite frankly, it broke. The team broke, and it didn't break because of injuries. It didn't break because of poor players. It broke because they lost the belief in each other, and they lost the belief in each other, and then all the energy just kind of went out of the locker room. So then you get a team that doesn't believe in each other. They don't believe that they can win together, and then you get this lack of energy. And then what happens is the players get mad at each other, and then they get mad at the coach, and then the focus becomes something other than competing and playing together. And boy, it can happen quick. Because this was a 109-point team a year ago. And to go from 109 to 80 points, that's a major league drop-off. And but boy, that's what happens when you just have a little bit of a lack of belief. It takes off from there.
What's the soccer team that you watched?
Tottenham.
What's that?
Tottenham Hotspur.
Tottenham.
So what tweaked me was he started talking in hockey terms. So he was talking about his identity, and he started talking in hockey terms, and then he was starting to talk about how he practiced his identity. And so they were in New York, the manager and the general manager at a leadership institute. So I flew into New York, and I said, I'll trade you. I'll give you everything we got, you give me everything you got. And we spent probably 5 hours together, and he was really interested. He had 9 nationalities on his team. And he said, it was so uncomfortable for these players to just shake each other's hands. Like, I don't know if you ever watch English Premier League on Saturday morning here, but it's the most everybody's hugging each other. Coaches are hugging players or whatever, but it's on purpose by design. It's to make emotional, physical contact with the players, because it's the only way you can make them comfortable and feel part of the team. So he walked me through how they practiced, how they played, how they dissected the game, which was really interesting. How they did the post-game evaluation, which our guys couldn't pull that off. It was too uncomfortable for our guys on post-game evaluation. But he called it sweeping the shed. And then he went over the way they practice to integrate how they play. And they have what's called identity days. And so once or twice a week they have a day where they're going to play to their identity. They want to be this fast team. Well, they've got to practice fast, and they've got to practice fast with endurance. And he walked me through what they did. So I found, then we started talking about how you deal with all these nationalities. We're the same. We've got Czechs, we've got Slovaks, we've got Russians, we've got Finns, we've got Swedes, we've got Canadians, Americans, Swiss, whatever. But his is even at a higher extreme. And he walked me through, like, this is a team that's, second overall, coming out of nowhere. And he's got, dealing with millennials, he's got a dial in, knows how to do it, and they're going to be good for a while. So that's where I went. I went there and worked with him, and then about a month later, I went to England and watched him play. It's really interesting there. They have they play in a place called Whitehall Lane. It's about, I think it's built in the 20s, and there's a new building next door that's being constructed, and they got like 36,000 that seat in the old one. They got about 50,000 waiting list, and then they got this new building that seats 65,000 or 63,000 or something that's just being finished. And the way they're paying for it is they built a second surface underneath it that they can roll out the top surface, which is the soccer pitch, and bring up the second, which is a football pitch, and they're locked in for 10 years. They get two NFL games. So 2 NFL games get played in this new building, and that's the money from that is what they're getting to pay for the construction of the facility. But he, like he says, we start training at 8 years of age. So they've got teams from 8 right up until the men's team that they're responsible for. So they have this organizational identity that everybody plays to. It's pretty interesting stuff. So I learned a lot from that, dealing with the kids. And it's hard, I'm 65, and I'm in a league of 20-year-olds, and I gotta stay current. That's my job, to stay current, or I'm going to become a dinosaur. If I don't, it wasn't comfortable for me on the what's and whys at the start, but now it is. But you expected when you said this is what we're going to do, everybody to buy in, but it doesn't happen. And then you got to get comfortable telling them why, because it takes a lot more patience. Like, that's what coaching millennials is it takes a lot of patience, and you can't get irritated because they want to know where things are going to be at the end, both personally, professionally, team-wise. They want those answers before they're going to buy in. They're not willing to. They want to know what the starting point is, but they want to know what the damn ending point is too before they're going to buy in. And you got to walk them through that stuff.
So even with all the, listen to the ticket all the time, and hear all the stories of how your old players talk about how much they hated the process, but now, to a man, they all express gratitude and admiration. So even with that, because the new players have heard those stories, probably talk to them, still important to do that.
Yeah, well, I think, you wish the players knew while they were doing it, why they did it. All of them do now. All the older guys know why we did it, and a lot of them that are coaching, they do it that way. But it's really hard. Like, I'm asking players to do things that are really hard, and then I'm asking, oh, by the way, you got to embrace this. I'm asking them to make big sacrifices. And the frustration for players as is going through this is that it isn't the X's and O's that I'm demanding of, it's the team things. And I'm a stickler for the team things. And it drives players nuts because it's the team things that I know if you buy in, we all have success. And that's what we built here. Like, I don't want to live in the past of what happened here in Dallas, but I know I want to learn from it. And what we did here was we became a team where the last 2 years I didn't even coach. I just instructed. They were already dialed in mentally. They were already dialed in emotionally. And that's what they've learned over time is he put us through all of this to where we just pushed each other. And it's what Pittsburgh has going. There's no way Pittsburgh should be in the finals. Too beat up, too many teams beating on them, too many injuries. No way they should be in the finals. But they have that knowledge, and they are able to push themselves to another level when it's on the line. I don't know if they've got enough left, but based on everything that's happened to that team, they should never have been in the finals. And yet they're here. And they're here because they've learned, without the coach pounding away, they've learned. And that's what we did here. I mean, we went on a 4 or 5 year run here, pretty impressive. But they were doing it. They were already bought in, and I just instructed. I didn't have to do it. And it was the same way in St. Louis. It was going. And then when it breaks, All you need is a couple of mangy crows in the locker room. You get a couple of mangy crows in the locker room, breaks, you're done. It's just like a firestorm. Because they're questioning, boy, there's got to be a different way to play, or they don't agree with it. And then whoever controls that locker room, after that, if those mangy crows don't get controlled, then they become the big voices, and now it falls apart. And that's why when you see a coach get fired, they say, well, the message was being lost, or the message got old. What a crock of shit. Like, what a crock of shit. Because the message got old with each other, and then the coach paid the price. And it's like when Lindy's a good friend of mine here. Lindy gets let go. And I come in and I'm talking to a couple of players, and they're all excited about this new system. And I said, here's the terms, here's the terminology. And they looked at me and said, well, that's the same stuff Lindy had. I said, yeah, you're right. It's the same stuff Lindy had. I said, is it going to be different in some places? Yes. But 85% of it's going to be the same. There's only one way to play. And sure, there's little tweaks I'm going to make, but at the end of the day, you guys have to buy this, or else it's not going to be worth it. So let's start there. That's what happened here with Stars before. They bought in. They really pushed it.
So what's the role of the captain in all of this? And I mentioned I grew up a Caps fan, big Stars fan now, been here 20 years, but can't help but watch that they can't get over the hump. And is Ovechkin, can you have a Russian captain? Is he the right kind of guy? What's the role of the captain in that process?
The captain is the worrier. So he's the guy that does all the worrying for everybody. And it used to be where you could just go out and play and impact everything. So you didn't have to say a word. The way you played impacted everybody. Now you have to be vocal. And if your captain isn't vocal, somebody has to come in and replace that. That's the difference in this generation. There's no such thing as nonverbal leadership. It used to be that, you could do that, can't do that anymore. The captain has to be a vocal leader, no longer. So if Ovi's not a guy that's a vocal leader, then the people around him have to carry that ball. And if you don't have it, the worst feeling in the world is in a intense environment when people are sitting there and nobody's saying what everybody's thinking. That's the worst environment. That creates tension, that creates pressure, and that creates anxiety. And that's when you fall apart. That's when it looks like you're skating in mud. So if he can't say it or is not comfortable saying it, then put people around him that will. Because somebody has to say what everybody's sitting in there staring at each other, thinking. I was saying this to, they had a corporate sales event down there at ACC, or at AAC yesterday. And there was like 50 clients in the locker room. And I said, this is the only locker room where everybody faces each other. Everybody else faces their stall. You go to a baseball locker room, they don't face in. Their chairs face the stall. Basketball, same thing. Football, same thing. They sit with their backs to each other, they face their stalls. They listen to music, they read their mail, do whatever, get dressed. But they don't look at each other. We look at each other every day. So I'm looking across from you, and I'm feeling, and I'm thinking of something. Somebody has to say that, so that there's a comfort level so you can play. And so when you see a good team, I don't know the inner workings of the Caps, but I just know when you see a really good team that underperforms when pressure's on there, it's not because they don't care. It's that expression that needs to come out, that enthusiasm, something stops it. And a lot of times it's because nobody's saying what everybody's thinking.
I gotta tell you, this is highly relevant for what we deal with in business world the last few years. Resonates on a ton of points. Curious now, how in light of all that, one of the things we face that you probably don't face to deal with elite athletes is when we're recruiting, hiring people, we come across folks that feel like they have a sense of entitlement. And yeah, you gotta get to buy-in, but is found that it's put a lot more pressure on recruitment and really being very maniacal about getting at the core of what makes somebody tick. You found that the way that you draft has changed in the last few years to get more into, past the skill and into
The will part,
yeah.
yeah. Well, I find, first of all, when you're recruiting, so we got to sell people too. We got to recruit. I find the only thing that works is if I'm vulnerable. So if I'm sitting there and I'm willing to open up about what I feel and who I am as a person, it goes to a whole other level as far as their comfort level to express themselves and get the true them. And I find for me, the more questions I ask, the worse it gets. Until they're comfortable with me, like I literally make fun of me, or I'll have somebody in there make fun of me before we get going, so that they are comfortable with myself. But this generation comes in thinking that they're already on the wrong floor. They already should be 5 floors up. So how you get them to buy in and want to even go through the process with you is having them have a clear understanding of how you see them getting ahead. So this is how I see you performing, and this is what's in it for you. If you don't tell them what's in it for them, they won't feel comfortable with you, and they won't feel comfortable with what they're doing. Like it's amazing if I don't tell a good player the end game, he's not coming to play. And it's tough for you guys. Like I used to work in the sporting goods business, and the place I worked at was 30 employees, and now it's 160, 170. And I go back there and I listen to my good friends who run the company, own the company, and I go back and listen to management talk, and then I listen to the employees talk, and it's the same thing they go through in businesses, and that is that there's a disconnect, and there's a disconnect because nobody's listening, and in most cases it's because the people that are managing it, they're hearing them, but they're not really listening, and they're not showing that they're actively listening or even anticipating making changes or being able to even have a debate or respect what their opinions are. That's how people feel. They don't trust that we care a lot of times. And so in order to do that, you got to open yourself up first. You got to be a little vulnerable. Sometimes when I bring a guy in to talk to him, I'll bring another coach in with me, and he'll make fun of me. And just, it cuts the tension right now. And, like, I'll give you an example. We need to get through the get to know you phase with me as the coach here. So I'm bringing in 2 former players who are very candid and very respected by the players that are here now. And their job is to talk about what it's like to play for me. And they are going to make fun of me. I'm not going to be there, but they're going to make fun of me. They're going to tell stories, and they're going to walk through it. But my hope is that the players are comfortable knowing where I come from, and that it's okay. But you got to be prepared that people are going to look at you and think, man, this guy's actually human.
You probably can't tell us who those 2 are, though, can you?
No.
I didn't think so.
But they're former captains, so you can go that far.
Do the math, yeah.
Anyways, it's a really coaching now is really complicated. And it's the stuff that you learn that, you know, I bought all the books on leadership and I bought all that stuff, but they're not relevant anymore. They're not relevant anymore. They don't help. They provide the technical structure of what to do, but I haven't found a good book right now other than rugby or soccer books that provide the proper instruction on the people side of things. And that's just where you got to be really good at that stuff, or you got to bring people in. Like I said, we're in the middle of hiring our coaches right now, and one of the coaches, I told one of the coaches today, your computer has to be down at 9 a.m. every morning. And I thought he was going to die. I said, and I don't want you in the office at 5 a.m. so your computer goes down at 9 a.m. I said, I need you to come in at a normal time, put your computer down, and your job is to walk down there and have coffee with the players and collect the pulse. Get in there and dig in with those guys. It's not in the X's and O's. All I need is 12 clips. I'll figure it out from there. But you got to get down there with those guys, and you got to make them feel good. That's your job. And it was like, well, shit, I'm never going to catch up to my work. I said, don't worry about this stuff. That's overrated. You got to get in with those guys, and they got to know that we care about them. And that's your job. Get down there. And it's like, you can't believe a hockey office. We play a game on Tuesday night, and you turn that off now, okay? That camera?
I think we're going to hear